Today we're out here in sunny San Antonio taking a look at the 2016 Infiniti Q50. This is Infiniti's competitor to the BMW 3 Series, the Mercedes-Benz C-Class, and the Lexus IS. It hasn't really been that long since we looked at the Infiniti Q50, and the reason that we're doing it again is because we have entirely new engines under the hood. This is the first time Infiniti has offered 4 different engines in any of their models in the United States. Under the hood, we have an all-new 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, 2 brand new 3-liter turbocharged V6 engines, and then we retained the hybrid model that we saw in the 2015 calendar year. 2016 isn't really a refresh of the Q50, so the exterior and the interior are identical to the 2015 model year. We still have these Angry Birds themed headlamps. Ours, of course, have LEDs right here. And then we have this large and distinctive Infiniti grille. The Infiniti continues to be one of the longer entries in this segment, and that really gives you more rear seat legroom than you'll find in something like a Cadillac ATS. However, the trunk is a little bit on the small side for this segment. Very much like the Lexus, the BMW, the Mercedes, and the Cadillac, the Infiniti Q50 is a rear-wheel drive vehicle by default, so we get the long hood look up front, and the wheels are pushed very close to the front of the vehicle, which is different than those front-wheel drive competitors like the Acura or the Volvo. Again, out back, essentially nothing has changed for the Q50, although we now have a red S right here if you're getting the 400 horsepower version. So if the outside hasn't changed and the inside hasn't changed, why are we here talking about the Q50? The reason is all here under the hood, because we have 3 completely new engines. The first engine is a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. It produces 208 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Now you may think that's a little bit low on the horsepower front, but Infiniti's reason for tuning that engine in that way is because they have designed the Q50 with the 2-liter turbo to compete with the BMW 320i, not the BMW 328i. Next up, we have 2 brand new twin-turbo V6 engines. The first one produces 300 horsepower and the second one produces 400 horsepower. Torque figures come in at 295 horsepower for that lower-end engine and 350 for the top-end model. Most impressively, however, the torque curve runs from about 1,650 RPM to 5,200 RPM. There is still available a 3.5-liter hybrid V6 option, which produces 360 horsepower total. All 4 engines are mated to a 7-speed automatic transmission, although there are some significant changes to the automatic transmission for the twin-turbo V6 models. All-wheel drive also continues to be an option in every engine choice, including that hybrid model. We don't have official fuel economy figures for the 2016 Q50 yet, but you should expect the 2-liter turbo to be very competitive with the BMW 320i, and this twin-turbo V6 engine, in my estimation, should be getting between 20 miles per gallon city and about 30 on the highway for a combined score in the 22 to 24 mile per gallon range. When it comes to front seat comfort, the 2016 model still gets 8 out of 10 points. These seats are quite comfortable for my body shape. We do have a manual thigh extender right here, adjustable bolsters in our particular model, and a 2-way adjustable power lumbar support. In addition, we have an electric tilt telescopic steering column, which you don't find in every model in this segment. A lot of manufacturers still give you a manual steering column. This is memory linked along with the seat. Now you should know that this driver's seat does not have a 4-way lumbar support option like you will find in a number of the European entries out there. And the passenger seat doesn't have any adjustable lumbar support at all. The rear seats continue to be quite large for this segment. This front seat is adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, driving very comfortably, so you can see I have about 5 inches of legroom left there. Now, one thing you should know is that these front seats do move a decent amount further backwards than you'll find in a lot of the competition. That gives drivers or front passengers with longer legs considerably more room than you'll find in the competition. It also means, however, that if I try and scoot over here to the right side of the vehicle with this front passenger seat all the way back in its tracks, not a whole lot of room for me to put my feet. However, you can still see that even with this front seat all the way back, I still have about 1.5 inches of legroom left. This amount of legroom is significant because if you compare the 2-liter turbocharged version of the Q50 to the Mercedes-Benz CLA or the Audi A3, which are probably going to be very similar in terms of price, you will definitely find more room in this cabin. As we see in most of the entries in this segment, however, headroom is a little bit limited. My hair is brushing the ceiling, and if I sit very, very upright in this rear seat, my head is barely touching the ceiling. If I move on over to the middle seat, you'll notice I do have to cock my head to one side because these outboard seats are a little bit lower to the ground than this center seat. The rear seats continue to fold in a 60-40 folding fashion, but there is no option to open them from the cabin. You do have to pull the lever back in the trunk. Speaking of the trunk, this is one area where the Q50 disappointed me a little bit, because you would assume that for a vehicle the Q50's size, we would have a larger cargo hold. It's most noticeable when we take a look at 24-inch roller bags like we have right here, shoved all the way to the back of the cargo area. There's not too much room right in front. In addition, there's not quite enough room to put a 24-inch roller bag in this position and still close the trunk lid. The Q50 scores 6 out of 10 points in my exclusive trunk comfort index. If you get the hybrid model, the trunk capacity drops below 10 cubic feet, which is quite small for this particular category. You should know that our model does not have a spare tire under this cargo load floor either. However, we do have hidden hinges, which is my preference for a trunk because they don't impact the cargo space at all. We also have a handy helper handle to help you close the trunk lid. The interior of the Q50 doesn't really change for 2016, so we still have a standard sunroof up there in our model, height adjustable shoulder belts for both the driver and the front passenger. Now, this is not an optical illusion. That perforated section of the seat is actually striped to give the seat a little bit more visual interest. You can see the manually extending thigh cushion a little bit better in that shot. The door panels are almost entirely soft touch plastic, except this small lower portion of the door right next to this bottle holder and storage bin that is a hard touch plastic. The Q50's interior has a very similar style to the other Infiniti models with this sweeping dashboard, very upright cockpit-like style. We have a large bin-style glove compartment over here. I was able to fit an iPad inside. The dashboard itself is dominated by this two-screen navigation and infotainment system. We have two large air vents on either side of this upper screen. Now, both screens are actually touchscreen, although they use different technologies. One is a resistive screen and the other one is a capacitive screen. The system struck me as a little bit more intuitive and easier to use than the Acura two-screen infotainment system, which comes across as a little half-baked in my estimation. If you want to know more about this navigation and infotainment system, go ahead and click that banner at the bottom of your screen. There is a complete review on this on my channel as well, and it has not changed for 2016. You'll find the controls for the dual zone climate control on either side of this lower touchscreen. Below this touchscreen, you'll find the optical disc slot, as well as some other buttons that relate to the infotainment and navigation system, and the buttons for our heated seats. Below that, we have a small storage compartment where you will find a 12-volt power outlet and a very small storage area that you can put a key or a small wallet. The Q50 does not get Infiniti's latest shifter design, but it is fairly close. There's a button right here on the back. It's a Cobra head style. Move it all the way to the back for drive, over to the left for the manual mode, up for up, and down for down. Infiniti's touchscreen is a little unusual in this segment because we do have an infotainment controller right here behind the shifter, but as I said, those two screens are touchscreens. So you have a map button, back button, camera button right over here, scroll knob, clicks around, clicks down to enter as well. The big difference with this system is that you actually have 3 different input methods. You can use this controller right here to control that system, you can touch it on the touchscreen, or there's actually a set of buttons on the steering wheel that allows you to do many of the system functions from there as well. Behind that, we have a drive mode button. This allows you to change the way the steering, the suspension, and the engine and transmission all behave. We have a variety of different settings from personal, sport, sport plus, to standard, eco, and snow. 2 large cup holders right over here, although they are a little bit close together, so the last time I had a Q50 was not able to put 2 large takeout sodas in there at the same time. Between the front seats, we have a softly padded center armrest. It opens to reveal a moderately sized glove compartment. You can see that I do have a camera in there right now. You'll find the SD card slot that maintains the navigation database, 2 USB inputs, and some auxiliary inputs as well. Over on the driver's side, we have essentially the same instrument cluster that we had last year. It's housed in this double bump binnacle that kind of reminds me a little bit of Kermit the Frog with these 2 eyes right here. Tachometer on the left, speedometer on the right, and a full color multifunction display between. This display gives you a variety of different readouts from your range, your fuel economy, trip computer information, navigation, next turn instructions, status of your driving aids, tire pressures, etc. Attached to the steering column, not the steering wheel, are these leather and magnesium alloy paddle shifters. The leather wraps a little bit onto the front, as you can see right here, and it coats almost the entire back of the paddle. These are some of the nicest feeling shift paddles available in any car at any price. We have up on the right and then down on the left. I am told that column-mounted paddle shifters like these are the preference of racing drivers. However, I think I have a very slight preference to ones that are attached to the steering wheel. On the left side of the steering wheel, we have a button bank that includes the volume up-down button, voice command button, and phone button. We also have these buttons right over here, which control the infotainment and navigation system. Not only do these function as a track forward and backward option, but you can actually control a wide variety of overall system functions with this input method right here, very similarly to the knob that is in the center of the dashboard. The steering wheel itself is a round 3-spoke design with moderate sport grips up top and some sport bump outs on the lower portion of the steering wheel as well. The first and most important thing to remember about the Q50 out on the road is that even in this 400 horsepower trim, this is not trying to compete with the BMW M3 or a Cadillac ATS-V. The 400 horsepower Q50 lies somewhere between a 340i and a BMW M3. Likewise, on the Cadillac side, this sits somewhere between the 3.6-liter naturally aspirated engine and their twin-turbo ATS-V. The way that that positioning manifests itself in this car is noticeable when you take a look at the tires. We do have relatively grippy tires, but these are not top-end summer tires, so you will find even grippier tires in that next level up of performance vehicle. The tire size selection is very noticeable when it comes to acceleration. We run from 0 to 60 very predictably, just under 5 seconds in this vehicle, between 4.8 and 4.9 in most of the tests. However, if you put this in drive and then you put the drive mode selector in Sport Plus, where the nannies are letting you have a little bit more fun, we get too much wheel spin in the back, and that actually increases your 0 to 60 time. You should expect 0 to 60 times in the all-wheel drive version of the Q50 to actually be faster than the rear-wheel drive version because we get more traction. In this vehicle, when the engine hits right around 3,000 RPM or so, there's just so much power and so much torque going on that it overwhelms the rear wheels. Now, the electronic stability control program does an excellent job of keeping that all under control, but in the Sport Plus mode, it allows you to have a little bit more fun. It allows you to kick out the rear end of the vehicle more, allows more wheel spin in the back. On the downside, that does mean it is going to get from 0 to 60 a little bit slower. The other area where this is going to be a little different than something like the ATS-V or the M3 is in the braking. We do have twin piston calipers up front, but you will find beefier brakes, of course, in those dedicated performance sedans. It's not that 60 to 0 times are long in the Q50. They're definitely not. This stops 60 to 0 just about as quickly as the last Q50 that we tested. However, this is not going to have the same kind of fade resistance that you'll see in those massive brakes that you get in the ATS-V or the M3. The Infiniti Q50 has always been a well-balanced sedan when it comes to handling. This has a strong rear-wheel drive feel. It's very easy to get the rear end to kick out, especially with this much power on tap. Absolute handling is hampered a little bit by the tire size ability of this vehicle. 265 with tires are the widest you can fit in the rear, 245s are the widest that will fit up front. The lateral Gs in this particular vehicle are hampered a little bit by Infiniti's default tire selection. I would prefer something a little bit grippier for the handling as well. Another major change for 2016 is the availability of a dynamic damping system. Now, this is not an air ride suspension like you'll find in the Mercedes-Benz C-Class. This is actually a traditional damper with an electronically controlled valve. That means this feels much more like a traditional suspension. It doesn't have that same floaty-boaty feeling that you do get in air ride suspensions. According to Infiniti, not only can the suspension make the ride a little bit firmer or a little bit softer, so that way when we're out here on rough roads like we're on right now, it's a little bit more comfortable, but it also helps reduce body roll. This version of the Q50 is quite comparable in terms of its overall suspension feel to the BMW 3 Series with their optional M Sport package. Run-flat tires also tend to add a little bit more cabin noise to the car, and that's definitely going on in this Q50. You will find quieter cabins in some of the competition, especially those that have active noise cancellation systems. The last major change that Infiniti made is in the steering system. We have a brand new electric power assist system in most of the Q50 models. Top-end trims do get a retuned version of their direct adaptive steer-by-wire system. The new electric power assist steering is not as engaging as the old hydraulic system that we saw in the Infiniti G sedan, but it's pretty comparable to every other steering rack out there. The direct adaptive steering system is quite interesting because it is the only steer-by-wire system available in North America. Under normal circumstances, there is no direct connection between this steering wheel right here and the front tires on the car, and it definitely feels like that under certain conditions. There are a few different reasons why Infiniti is using this steer-by-wire system. The first and biggest reason is that you can control the gear ratio, and that is the number of times you turn this steering wheel versus how far those wheels on the front of the car actually turn, more than you can in a traditional steering rack. Traditional variable gear steering ratios offer a small range of adjustment. This offers a very large range of adjustment because there is no mechanical connection. Now, because there is no mechanical connection, Infiniti can actually decide how much feedback they want to send from the front tires back to the steering wheel. And that means that Infiniti can actually try and cancel out certain external forces on the car. So if we're driving out on a very bumpy road, you won't feel the steering wheel twitch like you would in a traditional steering vehicle. You'll notice in the videos that I'm overlaying on your screen right now that the steering wheel on one side is twitching far more than the steering wheel on the other. The system will also try and cancel out crosswinds and grooves in the pavement. The software tweaks that Infiniti made to the direct adaptive steering package definitely improved the feel in the 2016 model over the 2015 model. However, I suspect that I would personally get the traditional steering rack in the Q50. It's honestly very difficult to describe the difference in the feel between the two steering racks, so you should just head down to your Infiniti dealer, try them both out, and decide which one's right for you. Although the Q50 obviously gets a few tweaks when they move from the 300 horsepower to the 400 horsepower version, the tweaks are not as extensive as we see in those dedicated performance vehicles. That means that the Q50 with all-wheel drive can approach the performance figures that we see in those dedicated performance options out there. However, it's going to cost you significantly less. Now, admittedly, this is not going to be as track capable as an ATS-V or a BMW M3, but it's also significantly less expensive. And for the average person who just wants something a little zippy out on the highway, this is more than adequate. Again, we ran from 0 to 60 under 5 seconds in this particular vehicle, and I suspect if you add the all-wheel drive system to this, you'll probably end up in the 4.7 second 0 to 60 range. Aggressive pricing has long been an Infiniti hallmark, and although pricing has not been announced for the 2016 model, I do expect that to continue. The 2015 model started at approximately $37,000 because it was not the base entry in this mid-size sedan segment for Infiniti, because they were still selling the old G Series sedan under this in order to compete with the BMW 320i. That model is now gone, and it's being replaced by that base 2-liter turbocharged engine. I expect that 2-liter turbocharged engine to start around $33,000 to $34,000 for 2016, and that puts this in direct competition with the BMW 320i, as well as the Audi A3 and the Mercedes-Benz CLA. Because that model is starting a little bit lower, my personal expectation is that the 300 horsepower version of the V6 will start a little bit higher, probably right around $38,000. For this 400 horsepower trim that we've been looking at here, we're told to expect it to start under $50,000. My guess is right around that $48,000, $49,000 price range, and nicely loaded it will come in right around $55,000 or so. With all of the options added to your 400 horsepower Red Sport version, I expect this will still be under $60,000. And that is an important thing to keep in mind, because this is not a Cadillac ATS-V or BMW M3 competitor. This is that next tier down that slots between a BMW 340i and an M3, because this is 400 horsepower. The ATS-V is, of course, more than that. More torque definitely in the Cadillac than we're finding in this Infiniti. However, the surprising thing is you will get fairly close in terms of overall performance for an awful lot less money in the Infiniti. The 2-liter turbo seems to be one of the more interesting versions of the Q50 because of its low-end target. Again, it is being targeted at that BMW 320i, which also means it's a valid competitor to the Audi A3 and the Mercedes-Benz CLA. The A3 and the CLA are going to be significantly smaller than the Q50. That means you're going to get much more car for your dollar, and I expect performance to be somewhat close to the CLA and the A3 as well. The key thing to remember in the entry-level luxury segment is that Mercedes, Audi, as well as Volvo are all playing in that segment with front-wheel drive cars. This is a rear-wheel drive car even with that base 2-liter turbocharged engine. That means that the driving dynamics in this are going to be superior to what we see in the Audi, the Mercedes, or the Volvo for about the same price. Infiniti has had something of a reputation for being the Japanese BMW, and in a way that's actually truer for this Q50 now than it was in 2015, because we now have those 3 turbocharged engines under the hood like we have in BMW's models, and then we have a hybrid under the hood as well. That's different than we see in the Cadillac or the Lexus, because the Lexus IS recently gained a turbocharged engine under the hood, but it's not a top-end turbo, it's actually their bottom-end engine. The top-end engine is still a 3.5-liter V6 engine that is significantly slower than either of the twin-turbo models of this, or even the hybrid version of the Q50. Over on the Cadillac side, we have the base 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine, a 2-liter turbo, a 3.6-liter naturally aspirated V6, then we jump all the way up to a Cadillac ATS-V. Cadillac ATS-V is faster than the Q50, but it is going to be significantly more expensive. It starts just over $60,000, ends up in the mid-70s. The 2016 Q50 gives us more of what we like and less of what we didn't like about the 2015 model. The direct adaptive steering system is now easier to avoid if it's not really your cup of tea. However, you can still get it if you want it. We now have that adaptive suspension system, which improves the ride and the handling of the Q50, and we have those brand new twin-turbo V6 engines under the hood, which are very, very exciting. Although the Q50 still lacks some of the polish and some of the sharpness that we see in the Cadillac and the BMW especially, the Q50 is very, very well priced, and you'll get more power for your dollar, especially in this 400 horsepower version, than you'll find in the 340i or the ATS with its 3.6-liter V6. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2016 Infiniti Q50. This particular model has been the Red Sport 3.0T 400. Be sure and check out those related videos down there at the bottom of your screen. Click on that subscribe button down there, and I'll see you next week.